When it comes to international politics, the one-stop shop for global issues is the United Nations. Established after the Second World War to, well, basically prevent future planet-wide conflict, it has evolved into a bureaucratic behemoth with numerous subsidiaries covering all aspects of politics and humanity. And as the pandemic has perhaps proven, can spring to life and coordinate global affairs with breathtaking clout, despite not having any direct authority. After all, the World Health Organization managed to persuade governments to lock most of the world inside their houses for the best part of a year. When global solutions are sought, the UN is there to choreograph and mediate. But it does not always get things right. The World Health Organization has come under significant fire for their perceived proximity to Beijing. In fact, the list of alleged scandals, corruption and inefficiencies that dog the various UN agencies is far too long to detail, but include appeasement, collusion, abuse of power, anti-Semitism and elitism. The UN has 5 permanent members on its Security Council, all of whom have nuclear arms, and they are China, France, Russia, the UK and the United States. But other countries feel that leads to a distortion of influence where the UN bows to the interests of the Big Five but fails to protect smaller nations. The UN is also a kingmaker. Its determination of what is recognised as a state and what isn't sets a geopolitical precedent. To this day, the UN has not recognised Taiwan as an independent state. Meanwhile, its global stretch and perceived might make it fertile ground for abuse, with suspicions that for many officials, particularly those operating in developing nations, the UN provides diplomatic immunity alongside the enormous potential for corruption and financial abuse, with recent decades also flagging up extremely grave allegations of sexual abuse, particularly in war-torn states, where exploitation of children has been exposed. The UN's election of Iran to the top legislative body on women's rights this year also raised eyebrows. An organisation of this magnitude is always going to be vulnerable to criticism and abuse. It is arguably inevitable. But the UN is rather like a big jelly. It's so enormous and amorphous that even if one side quivers, the entire structure holds its integrity and can fend off significant tremors. The UN has enormous influence, as almost every nation on the planet is a member, 192 in full. It has the General Assembly meeting today, where every state gets a vote. While the most important questions require a 2/3 majority, lighter matters can be resolved via a simple majority. The Secretariat oversees the entire body, where the Secretary-General can personally mediate disputes. You will have heard of many of the cast of characters to have held this position, from Boutros Ghali, so good they named him twice, to Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon, and of course today's chief, Antonio Guterres. Meanwhile, there are the international courts of justice, where countries can bring cases against other countries. The World Bank, the IMF, UNESCO, UNICEF, the World Food Programme, the High Commission for Refugees and the World Trade Organization, to name a few of the more familiar entities, as well as a drop-down menu of agencies headquartered all around the world. In short, the magnitude and the sway of the UN is eye-watering. But is it vital? As the General Assembly meets today, we really need to talk about the United Nations. Well, indeed, as the United Nations meets in New York for its General Assembly and Prime Minister Boris Johnson prepares to address leaders from across the globe, it's only right that we scrutinise an organisation that has cost more than $500 billion since its inception 76 years ago. Is the UN a force for global good, or bloated and undemocratic? After all, as I've highlighted, it has a mere 35 different arms. There they are. Look at all of those.